Simon reluctantly goes for a drink with Archie, but his underlying disquiet and depression cause him to have a bit of an episode in the pub's evil-smelling toilet. Pulling himself together, he got back to where he had left Archie, only to find that they had been joined by one of Archie's strange mates, the cheerful Cockney Tommy. Archie lets his guard down and comes clean that the island story was a lie, a cover story. He'll tell Simon everything later, back at the boarding house. All in all, Simon's emotions are left in tatters by the relentless and challenging events of the evening. He feels strangely alone, like he's the only person left on the planet. I quickly made my way down the narrow corridor and into my room. Eric, with his sensitive canine hearing, had heard someone coming and, with his uncanny sixth sense, knew who it was. His greeting as I opened the door was intense. As usual, he almost squealed with delight. "Hello, you," I said. "You won't believe the evening I've had." Eric didn't seem to care. As long as I was home, he was happy. The simplicity with which he lived his life was both a joy to witness and something I deeply envied. Oh, to live in the moment without the faintest stain leaking through from the past, and no concept of the future. Every event fresh and new and exciting. I got to my knees and pulled him close to me. Lucky, lucky boy. "Hey boy, I've got your favourite ball in the car." At the mention of the magic word ball, his face exploded in ecstasy, and he started pacing the room like a prisoner about to be released. "Calm down," I said. But to him it wasn't only a ball, it was a precious gift, a wondrous symbol of an exciting walk. It was the dream he chased, and unlike human dreams, he always caught his. Held it, relished it. Lucky, lucky boy. I got up and went to the door. Eric's expression instantly changed to a look of quizzical disappointment. "No, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going to the car for your ball. I'll be right back." Hearing my words, he lay down with his head resting on his paws. He then took a large breath in and let out a prolonged, resigned sigh. He understood exactly what I was saying. He always understood. I pulled the door gently behind me so as to produce the softest possible click from the latch. I believe that to Eric the loudness of the click indicated the length of time I would be gone. Loud click, gone for the evening. Soft click, back in a second. But it probably meant more to me than Eric. "Good evening," said a female voice from behind me. Good evening," I replied, surprised by Mrs. Candle's sudden appearance, and even more from the fact that she was addressing me. "How's the dog?" she said. "Oh, I'm so sorry. Is he disturbing you? I can't seem to stop him barking at passers-by." "No, he isn't disturbing me. I was just asking if he's all right." Suddenly her inquiry worried me. "Why? What's happened?" She looked confused. "What?" she said, cocking her head to one side. "You asked if he was all right. What's What's happened? Nothing. No, nothing. I was just being friendly, she said. You're a bit jumpy this evening. Oh, right. Sorry. I started to calm down. I've just had a bit of a traumatic night, so nothing's wrong with Eric. Is that his name? She said with a laugh. Yes, I said, and started to feel I was on the brink of having the first real conversation of that day. You're Simon, aren't you? She asked. I was both amazed and rather pleased she knew my name. Mrs. Candles had moved into the room next to mine a couple of days ago, but we had never exchanged more than a nod. She was a little mysterious and never seemed to want to communicate with anyone. But she knew my name. Mrs. Candles knew my name. I'm Rebecca, she said, holding out her hand. So that's her name, I thought. Simon, I said automatically, shaking her hand. Yes, I know. I just said that a second ago, she said playfully. Yes, of course, duh, I said, lightly slapping myself on the forehead. Although we seemed to be having one of the most fractured conversations I had ever had since my father tried to explain sex to me at the age of 9, I was nevertheless experiencing a really warm feeling, a sense of connection, a chemistry. Do you fancy a cup of tea? She said. Whatever your name is. I laughed. But not to be polite, I really laughed. She was funny and, well, nice. I noticed a long-forgotten smile growing inside me. Yes, thanks. That would be lovely, I said. As expected, her room was on fire with candlelight. The smell of vaporized wax and delicate fruit fragrances was very different to the faint aroma of wet dog in my room. Rebecca's space was very neat, and everything seemed to be thoughtfully placed. She motioned me to sit down in a low seat covered in a turquoise throw, sparkling with sequins. I discovered very little support as I sank into the seat. Then suddenly I was enveloped in an upholstery hug by the underlying beanbag. I watched her preparing our tea. She swayed rhythmically to the music coming from the CD player on the mantelpiece. Bob Dylan, I called out to her above the music. Yes, it is, she called back. I was rather proud of myself that I was right about the music. Rebecca came towards me carrying 2 cups. She placed them on a small beaten copper tabletop that hovered close to the floor on a rough timber frame. The whole scene looked like a Moroccan fantasy. As my hostess casually lowered herself onto the draped beanbag opposite me, she completed the imagery in her flowing, voluminous dress and blouson top. She looked like a gypsy about to read my tea leaves. You like Dylan? She asked as she produced a half bottle of whiskey and unscrewed the cap. Dylan? Well, all sorts, really. My tastes are rather eclectic, I replied as she held the bottle aloft and waved it at me. Yeah, why not, I said, and watched her pour more than a healthy glug into my cup. A very pleasing musky scent of sandalwood was evident as she moved nearer to me. I drifted and began to think about my eclectic tastes in music and, for the first time, feared that this was more an indicator of my lack of discrimination than a worldly ear. Cheers, she said, holding up a cup of whiskey-soaked tea. Cheers, and thank you, I replied. As I drank, I started to relax, and reflected on the fact that I could be in a noisy pub at this moment with angry Archie and that brain of Britain Tommy, had I not had my little episode. But now, here I sat with this rather attractive woman, very attractive woman, drinking tea and whiskey and listening to Bob Dylan. How quickly things can turn around, I thought. Maybe the trick is to be patient. Good times may be just around the corner. The alcohol had begun to affect me. I was not used to drinking, and on an empty stomach the effect was profound. I felt my face reddening and my cares trickling away into the beanbag. I looked around the room and noticed a guitar propped up against a chest of drawers. "A guitar!" I blurted out. "Correct," said Rebecca. "I recognized it immediately," I added, the whiskey speaking from within me. "Wow," she said. "You really are the music expert." "Do you play?" I said, trying to regain some credibility. "Yes, I do," she answered. "Oh, fab! Give us a tune!" The whiskey had transported me back to being a spotty teen with embarrassingly outdated vernacular and a compulsion to try too hard. She picked up the guitar and strummed it a few times, then plucked individual strings, listening to the sound and adjusting the tuning. Then she sang. The sound of the guitar together with her voice was breathtaking. Her fingers glided over the strings, releasing the soul of the instrument. She continued as I stared, mesmerized by her graceful playing, her left hand faultlessly moving up and down the neck of the guitar, her fingers effortlessly creating intricate shapes, and her right hand plucking strings in beautiful rhythm. Just a few feet from where I laid my head. Just a few feet from where I cried myself to sleep. Just a few feet from where I cuddled Eric, squeezing all the love I could out of him, was this woman with her candles and beanbags and this ambrosia. Who knows what's out there? Who knows what treasures are buried in the filthy earth? "Are you all right?" she said. She had stopped playing and was looking at me with concern. "What? I'm fine. Really fine." "You're crying," she said, with tears beginning in her own eyes. "Yeah," I said. "Great, isn't it?" The sound of noisy revellers outside the window burst onto our moment. I was too far gone with whiskey and music to respond. Rebecca, on the other hand, reacted violently. "Bloody kids! Always making noise outside my bloody window!" Then she shouted at them loudly. "There are other people in the world, you know!" "They're just people having fun," I said, struggling to get up from my beanbag. Rebecca was on her feet and moving towards the window. "Those fuckers are always up to no good. Fucking teenage wankers!" she shouted. I was seeing a very different Rebecca to the one that had wooed me with her singing guitar. I couldn't quite reconcile the two sides of her. I didn't like it. I really wanted to get back to the other Rebecca. I tried to get up, but continued to be held captive by the beanbag and alcohol-weakened muscles. "Please, Rebecca, they're probably just kids having some innocent fun. Weren't you just the same when you were young?" There was the sound of breaking glass outside, followed by a burst of laughter. "Does that sound innocent?" she asked pointedly. "No, that doesn't sound too good, but it's probably just a beer bottle." "Come on, sit down," I said. "Please." She visibly relaxed, as if that was what she wanted to do, but needed an influence from outside to achieve it. She sat down on her beanbag and sank into it. "Have another whiskey," I said. She reached over and took a glass from the top of the chest of drawers, then poured a good measure of whiskey into it. Before she screwed the cap back onto the bottle, I shyly held out my teacup, and she poured me a generous amount. Then she took a long drink from her own glass. After a few moments, she seemed settled enough to resume our conversation. "Not that fond of kids, eh?" I asked gently. She looked at me and answered with what seemed like a well-practiced response. "Kids are a pain in the arse. They drive grown-ups mad. Then they become adults. Then they drive their kids mad." "You don't have any kids yourself?" I asked. She paused. "That's a whole other conversation," she said. Her tone warded me off further inquiry. I changed tack. So, what do you do? For a living, I mean. Well, at the moment I work in an alternative lifestyle shop, she said. I'm not sure I know what that is. We sell candles and oils and books on self-development, that sort of stuff. I looked around the room at the candles and scent vaporizers. Yeah, I know what you mean. How long have you worked there? Oh, not long. I hoped it would help me to a more relaxing place, she said. I'm trying to stop myself from outbursts. She waved her hand towards the window. Like that. And how's that going for you then? I said, risking a little levity. Rebecca laughed, then smiled. Not brilliantly, to tell the truth, she said. What about you? I think that can wait to that whole other conversation, I said. We both relaxed into silence and sipped our whiskies. All through our encounter, I had been trying to catch a glimpse of her left hand, her ring finger. When she had played the guitar, I had clearly seen that she wore no wedding ring, but I was not convinced. She might still be married. I inquired as nonchalantly as I could, "Are you married?" She looked at me as if she was trying to detect the reason for the question, then raised her eyebrows slightly. No, I'm not," she smiled. I guess no one would put up with my temper. Oh, I'm sure that's not true. And before I could stop myself, I added, "A beautiful woman like you." The words left a flush in my cheeks. Shyly, I looked at her, but couldn't work out if her expression was one of predation or pride. "You think I'm beautiful?" she said. I studied the woman before me. Her head was slightly cocked to one side, and her large, dark eyes were moist. Soft candlelight shone on the most beautifully vulnerable face I had ever seen. It was so easy to be open with her. "Yes," I said. "Yes, you are beautiful." I wanted to lean over and kiss her, and I had the feeling she wanted to do the same, but before I could translate my emotions into movement, something changed. A distraction drifted across her, as if she had remembered she had to be elsewhere. "Do you need to be somewhere?" I asked. "No, yes. No, sorry, I have some things I need to do." "Sure, no problem," I lied. I downed my whiskey in one and struggled out of my bean bag. "Anyway, I need to get back to, Eric," I smiled. "Worse than a wife." Rebecca got up and opened the door for me. "Nice meeting you, Simon," she said. "You too." "Thanks for the whiskey," I said, stepping through the door and pulling it closed behind me. So that's Mrs. Candles, I thought.
Yeah.